Hey guys, Robert here, and today I have a returning regular and special guest, probably my most frequent interview I've had on, Tim Lim of Iconic Comics.
Hello, how's everyone doing?
Yep, and yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Iconic Comics, especially Black Ops and Common America, and any of the books tied into it, have been my gold standard when it comes to the crowdfunded comics. As far as, of course, the frequency and everything, getting it all out, the high quality, how much you guys care about the customers, all of that stuff. And you have a campaign going on currently. In fact, I should put the link in there. It's only a couple hours, like a day or a couple hours left to go, isn't it?
Yeah, the campaign ends on Wednesday at a little bit before midnight, so we have a little bit over 48 hours left on this one.
Yeah, and speaking of which, when it comes to the to that and to the blah, to the current campaign, it's the one that you've kind of been building up to for quite a while. It's pretty much iconic meets um Antarctic Press for the most part. I mean, it's Black Ops, obviously, but that's pretty much what it is, correct?
Yeah, one thing that we wanted to do with the current Black Ops arc was we wanted to have it be almost like a team up book where
Mm-hmm.
the Black Ops roster can change depending on the necessity. So, in a way, we do cheat because the Antarctic Press people that we have brought in are people that we've worked with before, but they're
Mm-hmm.
typically relegated to just Antarctic Press. So, for example, Punchline and Rags,
Yep.
even though some of their books are sold on Iconic Comics' website, they're actually not Iconic Comics books. We just
Right.
happen to be the retail distributor for them. And so they were the easiest ones to get permission from.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that really it's astounding, I guess, to us and to some of our readers is that this is essentially a team up that's been more than 6 years in the making because
Yep.
we've known each other for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Ball, the one of the creators of Rags, he was actually the
Yep.
first person to give me a cover commission from the indie comics sphere.
I
So
remember that. Oh no, not that. Sorry. It's right.
yeah, and so being able to kind of finally like officially meet in the Black Ops book is great. Our
Mm-hmm.
characters have actually already crossed over with him in his own title, which is
Mm-hmm.
ongoing. But being able to finally get everyone together and actually kind of close out the last of this Black Ops saga in a high fashion is really good.
Yep. Definitely, and yeah, because I mean, you had obviously Black Ops, Common America, then Black Ops, Common America, Soul Finder, and now it's yeah, basically iconic Antarctic Press, or just Black Ops Volume 6, and yeah, I mean, all the stuff you've been building up to, even in the backup stories, with Punchline and everything, I still love. I said it before, but I'll say it again. I still love that backup story where kind of taking that bit I suggested you guys long ago of making fun of the whole Carly during a girl. Of course, you made it very clear that didn't happen, which I figured you were going to do, but I still crack up at how you guys referenced it in that backup story where she then deals with what's the shark's guy's name again?
Sawtooth.
Yeah, him. And yeah, I just love that bit, and of course, then the stuff with Punchline showing up, and it's just like, I hope you're not talking about me. Ah, crap.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to do. One thing
Mm-hmm.
that we've discussed in I'm pretty sure on your program and as well as
Mm-hmm.
others is that we don't have alternate realities. Everything
Right.
has to be self-contained.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that if you look at like manga and anime, they do that too, where it's a very linear storyline. Not unless the focal point of the series is actually alternate realities. I think like right now, I think Dragon Ball Z is playing with a lot of that right now, which
Well,
is
yeah,
is
but even
fine.
then, they're unique Earths. They're not doing the parallel Earth where it's like, hey, I have a duplicate. The same species might be over there. Doesn't mean that the characters are over there.
Sure, and the reason why we do that is we think that, especially in recent years, it's been kind of overused to the point where
Mm-hmm.
the prime character is essentially watered down. They're not any more special than their counterpart on another Earth. I mean, don't get me wrong, we could play this metaphysical,
Right.
hypothetical, philosophical game of oh well, everyone has equal value to the reader. That's really what that boils down to.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we have to do was we have to justify kind of like why certain things appear the way they are and seem to contradict canon. And so for people who like Wall Might, who actually
Oh
read
yeah.
that book, we had to explain it as, well, it did happen, but Wall Might is kind of like the fictionalized version of what actually happened. Now, what really happened, that's up to the reader's imagination. So
Right.
we're able to kind of play it 50-50. For people who believe that the events of it are pretty similar to what happened in actuality, fine. And for people who just don't want to pay attention to it at all, I mean, there's your in-universe explanation as to what happened.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, we already know at least some moments happen because you've reused artwork for TV spots, like her shaking Walmite's hand and all that stuff. It was like that happened, but at the same time, again, just like we said, basically the whole her being turned into a dude. Yeah, that'd be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that series was very, very farcical and
Yep.
played heavily into satire. We do the same thing in pretty much all of our books because there's always that element of comedy, but there is a kind of a fine line where we step into seriousness and we have to ask ourselves like what things can actually happen in this world versus things that are relegated to just parody and satire and comedy.
Yep. And I just realized I was going through the other screen because yeah, apparently you have a TV tropes, a very well put together TV tropes page. I should point out.
Oh Lord, I didn't know that. I'll have to take a gander
Yeah,
at that.
yeah. Someone actually had went through and they mentioned all the different iconic ones, but the three conjoined ones, Black Ops, Common America, and Soul Finder, each have very detailed. Yeah, I'll bring it back up.
Oh no!
You know what I mean?
Wow! 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 Wow!
Someone actually went through to tell you how beloved the this whole universe is. That someone actually went through. This isn't one of those just slapped together ones. No, no. This is one of the ones that actually you can see someone right down to the individual, to the different issues.
I'll tell you a funny thing. So I used to think TV tropes. I thought it was if you were on it, it was a bad thing. But what they're trying to show is that a lot of ideas are used and reused to the point
Yep.
where you can always find kind of a rule
Yeah.
and a repeated line of thinking, no matter what it could be. You could pick up something like Casablanca or Star Wars,
Yep.
you name it, and you'll find something that's essentially a trope because it's just a repeated
Exactly.
idea in fiction.
That's why they say not all tropes are bad or tropes as tools.
Right.
Right. But yeah, and they've even gone through to make it clear, like for example, the Tomorrow Girl vs. Common America takes place after issue 2, or that, again, this is very one of the more in-depth ones.
Well, it's flattering. So if anyone is listening out there who actually made this article, thank you, at least for reading it. We're going to have
Yep.
to take a look at that later on, Mark and I, and kind of have a good laugh at it.
And make sure things are correct or, corrected. I would do that because you never know. I mean, I've noticed that. Much like Wiki, TV tropes can be a good place for information to remember stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so of course for the upcoming Black Ops, it's not just you on artwork, it's also Walden as well, correct?
Yeah, so the book is split in half.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, there's two missions. There's a Black Ops mission and there's a Spec Ops mission. And the rosters are kind of changed a little bit based on what they need.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt is doing I gotta get this right. He's doing the Black Ops mission.
Mm-hmm.
So he's doing 32 pages. And then I do the Spec Ops mission, which is 32 pages.
Mm-hmm.
So it's divided fairly evenly in half. I do a little bit more of the work on the front end because I do the epilogue and the prologue too.
Right.
But I mean, I don't want to detract from his work because he definitely did half the work in the book.
Right. Right. Now, looking from this preview artwork, so was Vicky. I take it she's still, even though she's now Commentara, she's still not off the hook, correct?
She's not. Her public identity is still a secret, so the public at large does not know who she is. And so what she will do, at least, I mean, I don't know how much I can give away,
Right.
but when she is working with Black Ops, she operates under the Vermilion Masquerade persona. When she operates under with the Common Core, she's going as Common Terra. But the problem is that, and this is something we'll touch on with Volume 9. She's a little bit overpowered. She's been
Oh,
depowered slightly because of the events of Volume 4, which have not
right,
been expounded upon, but we'll get to it at some point. She can't, for example, create like rock creatures or
right.
living matter anymore. But she's still really, really powerful because she essentially has access to all of the elemental abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Or her elemental ability is pretty much everywhere. If you think of like Kimiko controls water, but
Right.
she's not an expert to the point where she can just extrapolate water from the air. She
She's
has
not
to
a
find.
waterbender, in other words.
Yes, correct. So she has to have a source for it, and the same thing with
Mhm.
Misha. Misha can self-generate fire, but she can burn out pretty quickly because it requires a lot of energy output to do it.
Mhm.
Whereas the Earth is everywhere. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the thing that we stand on.
Yep.
So conceivably, Vicky could use it to her disposal if she can train herself well. But moving forward, she's almost going to be kind of an ace up their sleeve, at least temporarily, because one, she still has her prior commitment to her colleagues over at Area 51, and two, we don't want to overuse her. She should be something that should be kind of special whenever she shows up, but
Exactly.
that might change later on. But that's how it's going to be, at least going through Volume 9.
Right. Right. So as far as and also, like I say, Jack, is it intentional for Jackknife to look just like Usagi or Usagi?
Yeah, they look very similar. In theory, they could alter their appearance
Mm-hmm.
depending on what they feel like, because each of the animals has a full access to their genetic spectrum. So, I mean, if you think about, let's say, a guinea pig, the closest living relative to a guinea pig is a capybara, and
Right.
they essentially look
Yep.
alike with the exception of size and the fact that capybaras are better swimmers than guinea pigs are.
Mm-hmm.
Conceivably, if we had a guinea pig on the team and they had the same abilities as these animals do, there's nothing stopping that guinea pig from trying to grow the size of a capybara. For Jackknife, he's a hare, so um, he's not in the same family as USAGI, who's a domesticated rabbit. But that doesn't stop him from looking like him in appearance if the
Mm-hmm.
situation arises. So
Right.
depending on how things go, I mean, they could look any which way.
Right.
But uh, Jackknife, he came from the alpha male set of The Last of the Jackalope, so he
Yep.
obviously is going to try and look a little bit more intimidating than USAGI.
Right. Of course. I'm just saying because they both have the similar kind of design of the red, white, and blue, and the star and all that. So I was just curious on that.
Yeah, that's intentional, and he's supposed to be a mirror to him too. A
Right.
little a little bit deadlier, a little bit more standoffish,
Mm-hmm.
um, a little bit more. I wouldn't say battle hardened, but
Right.
he's more feral for sure.
Right. So if you had to go between USAGI or Usagi and Patriotter, I take it Jackknife would be in between, probably closer towards Patriotter.
He's a little bit more regal than Patriotter. Patriotter is definitely probably the deadliest of all of them
Right.
because he's the one who's not opposed to killing,
Right.
and he's the only one who's a carnivore.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, he'll rip your throat out if you
Right.
cross him the wrong way, um, or he'll yeah. He has no problems with using violence as a means to his
Mm-hmm.
end.
Right. Which I definitely have noticed, and that oh gee, with Rags, I'll be honest, I have the first 6 issues of Rags still in my digital format. I still need to get a copy of it, the other issues and everything, but the unicorn outfit I still always find just so ridiculously funny.
I think they pioneered it too. I remember there was a minor controversy because I want to say it was Fortnite. I might be
Oh,
wrong. It was someone, and they introduced a unicorn onesie as an outfit for one of their characters,
oh,
and I was like, well, in the small space of independent comics, most people were like, hey, I think you guys like ripped that off, and I think they basically just ignored it. They're like, nah, we didn't. Like, it's just parallel thinking. I mean, the unicorn onesie exists for a reason,
right.
but um, I don't know. Whenever I see it, I just think of Rags, regardless of
Right.
what people's opinions are regarding where it came from or who popularized it originally.
Agreed. Oh yeah. So getting back to the main story now. So let me just exit this up and go back. Because there's been a lot of questions I've been wanting to ask for quite a while, and I'm pretty sure those who've kept up with have wanted to ask too. For example, the professor. What was his name?
Gracie.
Yeah. Oh no, Gracie. That's the one I'm thinking about. The one that's with the bad guys.
Aragaki.
Aragaki. Yeah. Was he always meant to be bad? Because it just felt like up until this point, like now he felt a little fishy in the last volume, but it felt like his being the full-on bad guy came a little bit. I'm not going to say out of nowhere, but at the same time, like like you knew something was off about it, but now finding like, oh, he's completely bad. Was that intentional, or was that something you guys decided? I mean, I know you guys usually plan this up in advance. I was just curious in this regard.
It was intentional. I think the reason why he comes across that way in Volume 8 is because, so as an artist, I have to make a decision when I draw him. And originally I was going to draw him with his kind of happy demeanor. Like he would have the exact same dialogue, but he would look like really peppy and cheerful. But I always thought to myself when I looked at it that people would say, well, like, it doesn't match the dialogue. He's supposed to be a bad guy. Why does he look so peppy and cheerful? And I could find no way of reconciling it without changing his appearance altogether. But if you look from Volume 5 onwards, he always appears at the opportune time. So he's always there for for every single time that the automatons attack. And so
I didn't notice that, yeah.
Yeah, readers should be like, okay, there's something not right with this guy. Why is he always here whenever they're there? And that's why we explain it in Volume 7 where Carrot is like, have you noticed that these automatons, they're supposed to be from space, but we never see them land. They typically just appear, or they come from a water source. And we've noticed that they're all kind of attached or into proximity to one of these facilities that's nearby. So that was always kind of waiting in the wings as far as like our revelation that he was a bad guy. He's not out of the picture yet.
Oh, yep, I remember at the very end, yeah, his brain's been opened.
Not just that, but we touch on a lot of the events preceding it in Volume 9, too. So that's all I can say about that.
Okay. And now, as far as with Cynthia, she is an enigma for me. I'm still trying to figure her out. It's just like, and I bet you're probably glad to hear that, right? Because I'm just like, there's stuff about her. Like her hair, clearly intentionally meant to look like Simon's, first wife and everything. Correct. And her attitude is like she's clearly ambitious, completely almost amoral, but at the same time, it's like
she's not amoral. She's immoral. I mean, she's not a good person. We're just gonna put it that way.
Okay, I had a feeling. So basically, anytime she's coming off nice and sweet, especially to Sylvia, it's an act.
Yes. And there was a little bit of speculation that we were looking at. Some people were like, well, maybe she's a good person because she wanted to change her hairstyle to match Simon's first wife. And I was like, no. She's being manipulative because
I had a feeling.
She's trying to... It's hard to bond with Sylvia, and it's apparent in Sylvia's dialogue in Volume 6 because... You can tell in the first few pages as a little girl, she's like, I don't want to play with her. And Simon's the one having to try and talk to her and say, no, she's okay. I don't know what the problem is. And so there's a part where she puts her to bed and then we cut to just her mouth and she's not smiling. So obviously...
Right. That's what tipped me off. That's what tipped me off. She wasn't smiling. It's more like
she's not smiling. But most kids, when they call you mom... I mean, it's a sweet moment, but I intentionally used... We have it in the script where we cut to her mouth. We don't see her eyes. You just see she's not smiling. And the first thing she does, she looks at that photo of the ex-wife, and she's like, what does she have that I don't? And it's like, oh, her hair. I can change my hair.
I had a feeling about that. So, okay, so she is way more dubious than... Like, basically, any goodness from her is an act.
She has an ambition that we're going to slowly reveal starting with volume 9, and this is the hardest part that, and I mean, people can quote us on this. The hardest part about the plot moving forward is that it will continue to the very end. So a lot of people might accuse us of being like, well, they have a mystery box. They're like J.J. Abrams. It's going to be lost. We're at the end. It's a whole lot of nothing. That is not true.
No, I don't buy that. I don't
It is
buy
not
that.
true at all. Like, we definitely have. There's a very, very, very large overarching plot that we will drip out surely but
Slowly but
surely
surely.
but slowly.
Slowly but surely.
Surely but slowly but surely but shortly, whatever. Starting with volume 9, you're going to start to see the plan kind of come to fruition. At the end of volume, let's see here, 9, 10, 11, 12. At the end of volume 12, we're going to be at about the halfway point where if you're paying attention, you'll know like what she's trying to do. But that's where you keep an eagle eye out, because we're going to start dripping these hints like coming pretty fast moving forward.
Right.
So she has a lot of ambition. She's not amoral. She's definitely immoral.
Right.
One of the criticisms we got was, well, at this point you have a lot of characters who look like they're going to be undergoing redemption arcs. I don't like that. I want bad guys.
Right.
Well, trust me, there are bad guys. There are some people who will not leave the series redeemed by their own choosing.
Like in Vicky's case, she was lost. She deserved to be redeemed because it was circumstances that led her out. She wasn't bad, but Cynthia clearly is.
And then you have characters like Hair Trigger, where they're amoral. They have their better angel on their shoulder trying to tell them to do the good thing, but they're always going to be kind of straddling that gray line where, they wax and wane between good and evil. You have some characters like Zen or Pyro, who we're not truly sure of his motivations, but it's clear that he does have a side that can be noble. So, does he have a redemption arc? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and find out.
But then you have Zeno Psycho, for example, like who we already know. He's also been one of the big enigmas. Like, obviously, we didn't see a lot of him throughout this arc, as much as I was expecting. And yeah, we know what he's capable of, what he did to Vicky, for example. And yet, it's like he's clearly the first Zeno, I assume, right?
I can't give up. I can't give away anything.
Okay.
But since you're paying attention, there is a little bit of bait and switch, because not many people ask that question. They're like, hey, what happened to all that stuff that transpired in volume 4? It's like, oh, well, at least you're paying attention, because you'll notice that we kind of skimmed over him really quickly, but that was intentional, and that's really all I can say about that.
Okay, that's perfectly fair. But and losing and Carly's dad, and the way it was done was very interesting. Saving one of the villains. I love that. Even sinners would do the same. There was
someone, and we read and listen to pretty much every honest feedback that we get, whether it's positive or negative. And we did get one. And there's sometimes where we agree, and there's sometimes where we think, no, I think, with all due respect, I think you missed the plot. So he was mad because he said, that's out of character. What sane person would sacrifice themselves for someone who just tried to kill them? That doesn't make any sense. And I thought, well, with all due respect, that was something that we planned from the very beginning. And if you look at volume 6, there's even a part where it's addressed, and he says, how in the world do you bother going out there and save people when they don't like you? Like, I don't understand how you can go around and save people when the public does not like you. They want you to go away. And she says, well, it's hard, but you know what they say, it's no merit to you to only do good to people who are good to you, because even sinners do the same thing. And even grifters and robbers do the same thing. They help each other. So if you're not stepping out of your comfort zone and taking a chance to help someone who would not help you in return, that is the virtue. That is the heroic sign. And so when Mark and I were working on this conclusion, I felt like, okay, we know that criticism might appear, but that's why we even put the line where, at least from a Christian point of view, probably the most heroic thing that you can do is to give your life up for, quote, a friend. Now, it's even stated that her dad was so nice that essentially everyone was like a friend to him.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought that that's it. That's your explanation. And if you think like, no, man, F that girl, I would have never done that. It's like, well, to be honest,
Oh,
I think that's more reflective of you than it
yeah.
is the character. And unfortunately, we're not going to backpedal on that one. I mean, that
Right.
is set in stone. That was something that was planned from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Clearly
most
has an
people,
effect on her too. Clearly he's having an effect on her too.
and I mean, I don't know about you, but there have been times in my life where I thought to myself, oh, surely this person doesn't like me. Man, this person's an a
Yeah.
hole. And then they do something like completely
Well,
nice to
yeah.
me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like that person wasn't as
I
bad as I thought.
I'll say this. EVS sent me a box of free stuff just because I was saying how I'll and sarcastically saying, oh, I'll get to your review, the review of Cyberfrog, and then once he did it, I'm like, ah, shit, I'm gonna get off my butt and actually do it in response.
Yeah, so there are actions that people do where
Mm-hmm.
now they might not always be good, like
Oh
that might
no,
not be the intention, but it does make
oh
you
I know
second guess your opinion on them. And
exactly.
and then so this person
And
was like,
it didn't change my opinion, I'll be honest, but it did at least make me feel like, okay, I'm not going to be the asshole and sit on the review. I'm going to get a scanner, scan every page in so I can do a proper, detailed review, the same effort I would do for anyone else's.
this person who gave us this critique, they said, well,
Mm-hmm.
now we're gonna have a redemption arc for Zen or Techno, and I was like, well, I think that's you projecting. We didn't say there's gonna be a redemption arc, but clearly you
Oh
can
yeah.
see that she's having second thoughts because to her that's such a crazy idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why in the world would you do this when I basically just tried to knock you guys off
Yeah,
just a
and
few
it
minutes
could lead to
before?
a redemption arc, but she could very well throw it away, and it'd be for ways which would totally tick off Carly. I have a feeling. Am I wrong? Correct me if I'm wrong. Carly's going to keep an eye on her to see what she does to make sure her dad's sacrifice wasn't in vain. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Some people are like, well, there's gonna be a vengeance arc on
Oh no, I
Carly's
wouldn't go
behalf, and
that
it's
far.
like,
I wouldn't go that
no,
far.
that wouldn't happen because she as upset as she would be, she knows that her dad did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
He did something honorable and noble, and it's not the fault of her. Now it might be quote unquote her fault because she was in the wrong place in the wrong time, but Carly's not. Carly might be a little bit ditzy, but she's not stupid, and
Right.
she's not one to basically hold an irrational grudge against someone.
Exactly. Exactly. And I've been getting that vibe from Carly as well. I could tell from everything we've seen, and that's one thing I like about what your guys is writing with these characters, is that they're going to do stuff that stays. It's a friend of mine, Pikachu, puts it back best. It's the character driving the story, not the story driving the character, or the plot driving the character. The character driving the plot, and not the other way around. And clearly, you guys are still keeping true to the characters, because anyone could have had her be like, "Oh, I want vengeance," but it goes against what the character would do.
We had originally not we weren't going to go that route, but
Right.
we had entertained. Oh man, TV tropes would have had a field day with this. We did entertain the idea of not having her be like a dark Carly, but her being like, oh well, I need to take the edge off, and so I'm gonna go beat up some thugs or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we entertained the thought for like a week, and it's like let's not do that. That's one of those tropes that it's too predictable in a way where
Right.
it's like, nah, it doesn't fit her personality. She's a cheery person who, even in the midst of basically like a public backlash against her and people crapping her all the time, she's essentially like a female Charlie Brown,
Right.
where she's just not the type to not be optimistic. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she is going to deal with it in her own way that people will see in Volume 9. And to some extent, they'll see it in the Black Ops book.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, it's not one of those things that we're going to have set the tone to be dour and despondent and
Right.
dark. It's not fitting for the book.
Makes sense. Oh, by the way, now a while back I did a character profile on Vicky, and I'll be honest, even when I was working on that, I had a feeling this was coming. I just didn't expect it to be that soon. Otherwise, I would have held off on doing that profile on her full, becoming commentary. But the stuff with her dad, I be honest, I didn't say it in my profile, but I always had this feeling that Vermilion had a deeper connection to her past. It just felt like something about this just felt like, why would she come up with this? And then in the back of my mind, I always thought about her being the artist. It just felt like, was that a character of hers?
Yeah, and even in Volume 4, in the flashback with Lansky, it's obvious that she had a character
Yeah.
in mind. It was her original hero
Exactly.
persona.
That's what tipped me up. That's what tipped me off is the fact that you don't have a character that ready to go unless you've really been wanting to do this for since your youth. Like that is something you would come up with that from the heart.
Yeah, and the speech that she hears from her dad, I mean, it makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense because it's the idea that, up until this point, so back in Volume 4, we actually had another criticism, and the criticism was, I don't like the idea of them having public identities. Like, why are you doing that? And it's like, well, in manga that happens all the time. Like,
Exactly.
it's, I mean, if you even in Marvel comics, I mean, everyone knows who Captain America is. I mean, no, it's not a secret identity.
Although to be fair, they did keep it secret for a while, like during Gruenwald's run. But
Correct.
lately since Brubaker's run at the least, it has always been public, and they have not looked back.
No, because it's not like he's a vigilante. It's the idea that he's a public figure that just happens to do good.
And unlike Superman, he doesn't have the power where he can become dehumanized the longer he stays in that identity. None of that happens because he's still grounded enough. He still has that human perspective.
And that was something that we tied into Vicky's kind of personality, is this idea that Vermilion Masquerade is her playing pretend.
Yep.
And that's the psychological barrier that's always held her back, is this idea that, well, I'm this mousy person, but in reality, like, I know I can be a badass too, and I can do this. And it's like, well, if you're just honest with yourself and you make a personality for yourself that's completely you, then you can shed all of that. You don't need to have it weigh you down. And so we thought that was a very good, very opportune moment to redeem her in the storyline. And like you said, probably one of the most difficult things that we have to weigh is our timing, because we don't have the luxury of a monthly comic, and on the other hand, we don't have the luxury of manga, which is heavily decompressed.
Right.
We have to decide, like, when is it time to do a certain thing? Like, will the reader think it's too soon or too late or whatever? But we just figured, like, man, there were some people, whenever we introduced the Misha Siggy Common America love triangle, they wanted that gone right away. By volume 5, they were already like basically like sending us hate mail and being like, don't draw this out. You gotta wrap it up. And we were like, oh man, like what the heck did we do? Like it's hard for us to.
I liked it, but at the same time, no.
Hey, people hated it. They really hated it, and so we were like, all right, well, they don't like it. Well, we knew we were gonna end it one way. We'll just end it now since people really don't like it. And so for Vicky, we were getting a lot of feedback from people being like, "Oh, come on, we know she's gonna have a redemption arc. Like, you might as well just pull the plug on it right now." I was like, "Well, we have an opportune time to do it, so here you go." And and we had some people who were like, "Nah, you did it too soon." And for those people, I would say, trust me, where things are going now with her as Common Terra, I think you're gonna like it a lot better.
I gotta say also, this bit with Sylvia, I gotta agree with Carly. Who's the leader here?
Well, they're rivals, and so they're always going to be kind of jockeying for a spotlight as far as the two of them are concerned.
Between the two. I noticed that, but he always keeps to go back and forth between the two. Like there's so many times where Sylvia gets a lot of the stuff that would get him in the almost a leader spot, but at the same time, Carly's the first one. She's the one who got started. She's the one who does. It's just, I find it so funny.
Yeah, I mean, you do have that humor in there, and the two of them have to play off each other in that regard. They're not as hostile towards each other as they were in the past, that's for sure.
Right. But I think the thing is, though, having Cynthia be the main villain, it's that kind of who has the bigger connection. Obviously, Sylvia does. So I can understand why, if I was writing this, that would be my biggest, which character has the tighter one, so you almost feel like this moment telling her, telling Cynthia, what's what and everything, and you get what I'm saying, right? It's like it's that balancing act of when you have that personal connection, but at the same time, you still got to remember, like Carly says, who's the leader now?
Yeah, and the relationship between Sylvia and Cynthia, that's going to be explored more, and it's going to reach a climax at the end of Volume 12
Ooh,
because there's a lot of tension between them.
oh yeah.
If you think about it, it's kind of like, well, you're friends with the person who's essentially the villain. Like, come
Mm-hmm.
on. Like, why can't you talk to this person? And I mean, like, if you reflect on like family
Mm-hmm.
family issues, there are times when it's like, hey, I need you to talk to this person, and it's like your brain has a barrier because like, I can't because
Oh
maybe
yeah.
it's like it's my spouse or maybe it's my mom or my dad. And I think anyone who's like married and has like an in-law who they might have like a quarrel with, they might be
Yep.
able to sympathize with this, where it's like, oh, it's so hard because it's, my wife's relative or whoever, and it's not as easy, it's not as simple as it sounds having to approach them and talk about him. But
Mm-hmm.
the thing is that they're going to come to a head because obviously when your mom
Yep.
is essentially the villain, you gotta confront them. I mean, that's just a
Oh
situation
yeah.
that's waiting to happen.
She even says here, like, it's been months since Detroit and you never return my calls. It's like, yeah, that's clearly things are boiling over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also gotta say, I like her constantly going through these different, like the Mark III suit now and all that. It's just like, how many of these versions of her suit do you keep on having for her?
Well, it's armor. I mean, she can change it as much as she wants.
Right?
So we'll see how long this one lasts.
Yeah, but at least you're not trashing each of them before they change, at least.
We'll try not to. I mean, actually, in Black Ops, she actually goes back to the Mark II armor for a
Mm-hmm.
bit. So
Right?
she actually, I mean, it's kind of like Iron Man or Batman. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a wardrobe, so you can change the appearance based on your needs.
Right. By the way, I don't have the image with me, of course, but I still snicker at how you came up with the character design chart sheet and made it clear what each of the different sizes of the ladies are and all that. It's just like, and
We
that's
did that.
just, yep.
We did that mostly for our Japanese audience because those are
Ah,
really popular. Like people love those height charts.
oh,
And for example, they like things like blood type too. I mean, they like to
yeah,
know everything there is to know about a character. And so those were just wildly popular. I
yeah.
actually have one. There's one dropping tomorrow morning.
Ooh, nice. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
can't tell you who it's gonna be, but yeah, it's
mm-hmm,
coming.
mm-hmm. But the fact that Cynthia is the largest of all bust of all the lady girls on either side, it's just like, of course she is.
She's the second tallest,
Mm-hmm.
but she has the largest bust size. I mean,
Yeah,
she's
the bust of
she's
evil.
she's large and in charge. We'll put it that way.
Exactly. Oh, I guess it was Kimiko with the ramen. Again, because I have the Gaiden book as well that collects all the webtoons and everything. And just seeing that last one again with her, doing the commercial and everything. It's just like he's just like this cracks me up. Just this whole thing. And I loved at the end of the last volume when it's like, how do you think I felt having to deal with this thing? Grow up with this thing.
Yeah, and that's one of those. It's one of those instances where if you keep up with the webcomic, it's a bonus because it's like, oh my gosh, it's the cup from the commercials. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's a giant robot. Is essentially
Yeah,
what it
just
is.
that look on her face. She's like, ah. I mean, what? I'll be honest. What was her dad thinking that this would be a good thing?
Yeah, he's not very good at coming up with some of the marketing stuff, but I mean, their ramen must be really good because they're one of the top ramen companies in Japan.
Oh yeah, but again, it's just like, was that his idea for that? Because that's just like, I mean, in concept, I get it, but doing that with his own daughter in front of it's like, but the fact that he's sweating as well, he's like, I think even he's realizing like, maybe that was a little too far.
It's kind of like if you have children or nieces or nephews and you want them to do something cute for like social media, and they're like, I don't want to, and it's like, no, just put on the silly hat, and they're like, no.
So I gotta say, my favorite, what my favorite of the crossover that were in the webtoons was the Florida Girl crossover.
Oh yeah, that was a lot of fun.
It's just so funny. This girl who's always getting into trouble, and And Carly, poor Carly, is just constantly roped into her shenanigans because she's such a nice girl. But it's like, if I was Carly, I'd be like, you have issues.
Yeah, and those are some of the most fun crossovers that we have because I love the idea of Florida Girl, where it's like, if you ever read those,
Yeah,
if you ever
yeah,
read those Florida man headlines where it's like,
yeah.
man, some crazy stuff happens in Florida. It's like, just imagine if that was in person, if that was incarnated into this drunk girl who gets into fights all the time.
Or those crazy stuff like cake, the manatee, and all that. It's just. Now, I assume she is, obviously, since that is completely independent, not going to appear in Volume 6 of Black Ops, correct?
Who?
Florida Girl. That's just stuck to the webtoons, correct?
Yes, and the reason why I'm pretty sure Merryweather would not have a problem with it. However, it is their character, and I want to just respect that because what will happen is, I mean, we're already kind of spread thin because between Mark and I, like, I have to deal with all of the kind of finances and spreadsheets in terms of where we are. I mean, imagine if I had to deal with like paying royalties to Merryweather every time we see a book. I could not.
Yeah.
I can't deal with that. So maybe in the future. I mean, I know that we have something planned coming soon, but we're always talking to each other as far as what we can do with the Florida Girl character.
Yeah, because again, it just cracks me up. The two of them, like they drew one and then you drew the other one. It was just. But yeah, so I gotta say also, this was my favorite cover. It's just the stare down between these two, and it's just something that's been a long time coming, even just for an image. It's still hands down my favorite cover you guys have done yet. Nothing has topped it yet.
I like it because it's kind of a red herring because you think that there's going to be like a major fight or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was symbolic in the idea that, I mean, they have a three-way tie between themselves and Siggy, and essentially it's like, well, one of them has to come out on top. Now, some people actually didn't like the way that we ended it because they're like, no, Misha's so aggressive and she would have fought for her man. It's like, no, but that's the point. Like, just as with Sylvia. So Sylvia is kind of the trope of the like the oh ho ho ho, like the haughty noble. They call it the haughty noble woman trope.
Yep.
She can't be 100% beholden to that trope because that would be predictable. What you do is you have to do something, tweak it a little bit because that makes her an individual character. So what we did with Misha is with Misha, it's like she just knows, like she's done everything she can to kind of get Siggy's attention. It's clear that he's torn and that he doesn't know what to do. And so she becomes the bigger person by saying, I know what's going on and I know kind of like where this is going to end. So,
know where to throw the towel in other words.
Right. And so she's like, go get, go get your dream girl. Like, it's going to hurt me, but they have that it's kind of a cliche saying, but it's like, if you love something, you know when to let it go, because you know that it's just better for them. And it's like if you catch a butterfly and you're like, well, I love this butterfly, I'm gonna leave it in a jar in my room. Well, butterfly's probably not that happy being in that jar. You have to let it go if you really, really love it, because you know it's gonna be happier outside. That's how we decided to end that. And like I said, I had to talk with Mark today, and one thing we talked about was readers can't help it. Sometimes they bring a lot of their own expectations into the book.
Yeah.
You have no control over that.
And the longer this goes on, the more their expectations are going to be into place. You can't help
it's going to be worse. It's going to be a lot worse. Where it's like, why did you do that? I would have done this. It's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but...
Hey, that's my plan whenever I get started. It's going to be like, I have a set story I'm going to tell. I might tweak things, but I'm not going to be beholden as... I mean, I obviously take them into account, like you guys did with the love triangle. Like, if it's that strong, I'll speed it up or whatnot. But
right. And that's a perfect example where we knew where it was going to end, but just because it was not popular, it's like, well, we'll just speed it up and just get it over with now, because, I mean, it's not one of those things where we've made an irreconcilable choice and we can't turn back on it. It's like, nah, I mean, the story that we're going to tell is the story that we're going to tell. If you don't like it, I mean, sorry, but I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. I mean, we don't have any control over the major plot points.
Yeah, exactly. Now,
That
I was
sounded weird. We do have control, but
well,
we're not.
obviously. Again, the characters are telling you, it's the whole the characters are driving the story. What would the characters do?
Correct.
But I would say though, I thought Misha and Chad, I'm just like, I I keep on seeing these two as something because ever since that little of them arguing back in the other volume, like them just snapping at each other and everything, it's just I keep on feeling like there's something between these two, and there's some tension between these 2.
The good thing is that in Volume 9,
Mm-hmm.
I think our roster for characters who are our heroes, it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to balloon as much as it did with Volume 5. I mean, if you think about it, in Volume 5, we introduced the Zen Rangers, we reintroduced Chad and
Mm-hmm.
Darlene, we introduced Cynthia at the very end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one critique that we got was, wow, there's a lot of stuff going on in Volume 5.
Mm-hmm.
In Volume 9, it's going to be scaled back a bit, where I think we're going to introduce, let's see, 1, 2, 3 new characters.
Mm-hmm.
But from that point to the end of the third saga, you're not going to see a whole lot of additional people. We're going to definitely buckle down and focus more on the characters that we already have and flesh them out more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think ultimately that's what people want is they want to focus on the primary characters that we have and give them a little bit more light to shine, and so we're going to do just that.
Yep. Neo Star Production put it best. I could see a Rogue Gambit kind of thing with Chad and Misha. That's kind of my feeling. Especially, that arguing, of course, like hot, cold, hot, cold. That's the other thing. It's the opposites of their powers that makes it so interesting.
They bicker like an old married couple.
Exactly. I think it was in volume, was it 6, I believe, but that bit where she's storming down, down the, no, he's storming down the hallway and they're like, hey, arguing at each other.
Yeah. They're in the hotel when that happens.
Exactly. I just love that. And I think, was it 6, I believe?
It was in 6.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just going to go find that. I gotta say, Henshi, when he's all muscular, always cracks me up.
That was Mark's idea. I was like, well, it would be nice if we could reintroduce Marmot Maiden and actually have her have a pet marmot. And he was like, yeah, marmot that can like eat stuff and turn into different things. I was like, I don't know where that idea came from.
Oh yeah,
but sure, whatever.
Like over here, he turned into a little tree.
Bonsai tree.
Exactly. Like, what did he eat for that?
Yeah.
I love that. You never can really have to know about what he ate and everything. Oh, I remember reading about that. Didn't the villain brainwash you into thinking you were? I said you were. So in other words, that happened to him. Just not Carly turning into a dude.
Yeah.
Well, because one you can buy off a bit more than the other. Like that one, he's acting game flamboyant. Whereas Carly is a complete rewriting of her genetics.
Yeah.
Oh,
and not just that, but visually, Chad looks very different too. He looks nothing
yeah,
like he did in the Walmart books.
true. There it is, though. Like I said, ever since I saw that moment, I'm just like, there's something going to go on between those two if things don't work out with Siggy. It just felt like that.
Oh man, looking at volume 6 was experimental. I always change my art style in every book because I just get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I drew so differently.
Oh.
that was what, a year ago. I was like, oh
Right.
man.
Which I gotta say also, this moment here was Misha and everything. It's like the way she's dressed and everything, and Siggy's just completely missing the signs. This felt almost like I gotta say, with when it comes to Misha, maybe it's because of the fire and everything. I keep on getting a Sailor Mars parallel.
She's well, actually, we don't. A lot of people compare it to Sailor Moon. We actually don't use a lot of Sailor Moon references. I just
Right.
think that when it comes to archetypical 4-character teams, I think that's just how it goes. Because I think personality-wise, she's probably closer to Jupiter because she's more tomboyish.
Definitely. But I'm just saying that the way she looks and that sounds something more like Mars would do than Jupiter. Jupiter would be more like, hanging her head in defeat. But this felt more like what a Mars would do of just being like, why do I even, don't bother. But I just love that though. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to compare our gun collections. It's just, again, I just crack up at that. There's just so much about these characters to like and to love and to enjoy and everything. Okay, I think that was the other reason why I kept thinking there was something going on. It kept on feeling like when he's sweating, I almost kept thinking he was being forced to do something that he didn't want to.
He just has stage fright.
I didn't read that into it. I should have.
No, no. You shouldn't have. I mean, we
Right.
we wanted people to be kind of surprised at the end.
Yeah.
So I did as many visual cues as I could to throw people off.
Yeah, and that was one of them, because I'm just like, is he being forced to do all this? Because that's the vibe you're getting. But now that you say it's stage fright, it's like, of course! Oh, geez, the thing about light pollution and all that, I just love... Oh, here's that one we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so that moment, if you scroll up where I show just her mouth, that's done intentionally.
Right.
Because obviously, like, the eyes are masked, so you don't see her expression, but you can just tell.
Yep. Like, how can I make her like me more? What can I do to make this to my advantage? And the hair.
Yeah.
Again, just looking at that, and then, again, it's just, again, now I would say though, volume 7, I noticed that's when you brought in a lot more of the changes for Akari, like the jacket and all that. Was that, like, why do that in the penultimate of that saga? I was curious on that. Like, the bike, the sword, like, I mean, I know there was a bit of a time gap and everything, and
it's not that big of a time gap. It's probably about 3 months.
Right.
But we did that specifically to tie in to Common Academy, because in Common Academy, that's the jacket that she wears. So we still have to do things where visually, if you're reading kind of everything that's in that Common America universe, you have an idea of where things are actually taking place. She actually puts on the jacket because we're implying that it's somewhere near the fall of whatever year it is, so it's a little bit colder outside, so she's wearing a jacket.
Right.
And then you have the motorcycle, you have the sword. It's just basically to show that in the 3 months that have transpired, they're dealing with a global threat, and as such, they're not conscripted, but they're essentially independently contracted by the Black Ops team, and so they need a little bit more tech so that they can actually be a little bit more formidable in battle. And so that explains why they have a lot of that stuff.
Right. Again, just stuff like that. It's like, I just love how much thought you put into all this. Because like I said, when I've told you and even Mark, when you've been on my show, I've shown you a bunch of my characters I've come up with. Well, since I've had you guys on, I've been coming up with a different incarnation of my whole series set in space in the future. But it's the one that I find more interesting, where basically we have this whole, my friends and I have this whole big epic in our mind of what we're going to do, where everything we've had in the past, the fan fiction era, all that stuff is canon in the long, like, decades, centuries in the past. But a lot of stuff still comes into regard in the present. So, but we're coming up with our own, like, this epic of, legacy, that talks about legacy and all that. And just things like of this big, huge accumulation of things falling in. Like, again, but what I'm bringing that all up is that much like you guys are putting all the thought into it, I put a whole lot of thought into stuff that I'm sure is going to have people are going to be like, ooh, cool. Hey, what are you doing? Oh, I don't like this character. Oh, now I like this character. Things like that. Sorry, I didn't mean to ramble.
Oh, you're okay.
But what's the Miss Einstick, is that how you say her name, or Einstick?
It's Enstick. It's a play on words, carrot and stick. Now, she's actually based on a real person. We actually have a friend whose name is Carrot, and her Twitter handle is Carrot and Stick.
I think you mentioned that before. Not on one of the last times you were on, but
yeah, she's cool. We've known her for a long time. So we've kind of immortalized her as a reporter. I don't know if that's actually what she looks like. So before anyone asks, I have no idea. It's a completely fictionalized version of her.
Yep, I do. I like the story for what's going on with her and how everything's building up, and like how she's, yeah, looking over all the stuff and helps out whenever she can. I think you compared her to, she's the team's April O'Neil.
Kind of, sort of. I would think that she's more like the Question
Ah,
in Justice League Unlimited. So she comes up with stuff that sounds really far fetched, but
mm-hmm.
she's probably the only one. She's supposed to represent truth in journalism. So kind of like how sometimes like the person with the weirdest news is actually the person who's actually telling the truth. It's
Like
kind
this
of like
bit here, like this bit here.
yeah, it's kind of like so the National Enquirer, it typically has a reputation as being a tabloid.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been a couple times where they're the ones who broke the
Oh,
news.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
it's kind of like that, where it's like, well, sometimes you have some people who are the town crier and you think that they're kind of wackadoodles, but they're the ones who are actually doing the deep dive, and regardless of the conclusion of what their research might show, I mean, they're telling the truth, or at least the truth to the best of their ability.
Right.
I'm not saying the Inquirer does that, by
Right.
the way. That was probably not a good analogy.
No, I get what you mean. Now, as far as, again, the shared universe and everything and all this stuff with Rags, is there going to be an explanation for how the zombie stuff happened in there? You can explain that?
No, not doing that.
I was going to say, yeah.
The way it works is it's kind of like, this is the example that Mark uses. So back in the day when G.I. Joe and the Transformers would team up.
Oh, I know where you're going. It was canon for one story, but not for the other.
Well, whatever
Right?
transpires between the two of them
Right.
is canon, but what they do in each individual book
Yeah.
is not canon.
Exactly.
So, for example, in the Transformers, San Francisco got nuked. But
Yep.
in G.I. Joe, San Francisco's just fine. And it's like, well, how do you square that circle? It's like, you don't. I mean, they're both canon to each other, but
They're intersected and going back to their own canon.
correct,
afterwards.
without living in two different universes per se.
Exactly. It's kind of like the Savage Dragon Superman crossovers. It's definitely canon for Savage, but not for Superman. But clearly something happened, regardless.
I'll tell you one that really messed with me as a kid. So,
Oh.
as a
tell.
kid, I didn't really understand the concept of like alternate universes. To me, it's like, well,
Mhm.
everything has to be canon, and that's how you tell a story. And so
Right.
whenever I was introduced to the idea, I was like, okay, so this is just another thing that I need to make sense of. So do you remember in the 90s when DC and Marvel had a crossover?
Yep. Well, I remember a bunch of them. Yeah.
So when they crossed over, it was because they were two alternate realities.
Well, that was in the 90s. Yes. Now, in the
Yes.
earlier days, they shared a universe.
Correct. Okay, so they crossed over in the 90s, and it's explained that, oh, there's actually like two universal gods, and they're brothers,
Yep.
and they're about to meet, and that's why our worlds are coming together. Okay, so one of the battles that they had was who was it? I think it was the Joker and Spider-Man.
They met up, and he remembered what happened because it was the Ben Reilly clone. He had no memory whatsoever.
Yeah, and it was weird because so they met up in the crossover, and then a few months later, after the events of the crossover, there was a standalone title where it was Batman meets Spider-Man. And it's referenced. The Joker is talking to Spider-Man, and it's like, oh, like you were wearing a different costume last time, and Spider-Man, who's Peter Parker, is like, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, it was supposed to be Ben, but because of other things, then they're like, oh, no, it should be Peter because of this and that. So,
well, but in that crossover, it's implied that they live in the same universe, not two separate universes. And so I was just like, wait, how did we square the circle? And it wasn't until later I was like, you don't. Like, that's just how it is.
Then there's some crossovers like the Roger Stern Hulk Superman crossover where it was its own universe entirely. But I love that, though, how it's like they treat it like, oh, the Avengers, Earth's Mighty Zero. Lois, how can they be Earth's Mighty Zero if they don't have Superman on the roster? I just love how they just roll with it. Like, it's one universe. Don't think about it. And again, I just love stuff like that.
It's kind of like in whatchamacallit. It's like in the Dragon Ball comics.
Oh yeah.
There'd be a panel where like someone gets punched and then they're bouncing all around and then they hit the top. They hit the top of the the panel border,
Mm-hmm.
and then they hit the ground. And it's like, but how is that possible? It's like it's comics. Like
It's comics. We don't have to explain it.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Right.
I think there are times when canon definitely matters, but there's some
Oh,
times where
yeah.
you just have to wink at the audience and be like, just go with it. Like don't
Oh,
ask
yeah.
any
Now,
questions.
now, in my case, I do, like I told you about with my story stuff, I do plan on incorporating a lot of multiversal stuff, but it's more for a case of one of the big threats is someone who's trying to manipulate the multiverse. So it's more like I'm having it for a story reason, not for a, oh, cool, let's look at this. Like, no, there are reasons behind each of these versions existing. But again, that's what I would do with that. But it's something like that where it's like, if it serves the story. And I just realized I just completely just brought in something that was so random.
Um,
Yeah,
as far as
sorry.
multiversal stories go, I think one that did it very well was
Mhm.
the Age of Apocalypse, and the reason
Oh,
why is because
the M-Cron crystal shattered.
well they imply
Yep.
that there is a prime universe, and that prime universe
Mm-hmm.
is the one that we know of. I guess what you would call Earth 616, and then
Right.
an event happens where Legion goes back in time,
Yep.
kills Xavier, and because of that one event, there's a splinter that creates this other alternate universe. So regardless of how you see the validity of one universe versus the other, you can't deny that the prime universe was so important that
Mm-hmm.
a whole other universe splintered off of it.
Well,
I consider that very different than just being like, well, there's two universes running completely parallel to each other. It's
actually,
like,
that's not exactly what happened with Age of Apocalypse. Actually, what happened was, what he did was such devastation of forcing of a change that the M-Cron crystal shattered, and that's why there's a subplot during Age of Apocalypse where they have to regather the
right,
crystal.
we have to regather the M-Cron crystal, yeah.
And then because without it, they can't put it back together no matter what they do. So they put it back together. Then they change the history. But once they put the crystal back together, that means Marvel's laws of time, where you don't really erase the timeline. You just create a new branching timeline, which what they've been doing with. Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
and the bad thing about it is it sucks. I have never read any ancillary material to the Age of Apocalypse that's been good. That's just my opinion. A lot of writers have tried to continue that and be like, oh, what took place in that storyline? I was like, well, I really don't care because it's
don't
not
care.
good, and not just that, but it's like it just after that moment it just loses its importance. I think they did just fine with concluding it by basically just everyone getting nuked at the end in X-Men Omega.
Yep, definitely. And then basically that timeline done, dead. It shouldn't have lived.
Did I ever tell you this? So my favorite Marvel character is actually Morph.
Oh, yep. Morph. The Morph we got from Exiles, wasn't he from that version or version?
He was from an alternate version of
Right.
He wasn't even from an alternate version of the Age of Apocalypse. He was an alternate version of the Marvel 616 universe.
Right.
Where Kevin Sidney never died. But what I liked about Morph was that there's not much to know about his backstory.
Yeah,
I mean,
you don't really need to. What you got is what you got. That's all you need.
Yeah, and it's like, well, he died in both the 616 and in the Age of Apocalypse.
And the anime series, well, technically.
No, he's back in it. Well, yeah, he died there, but he came back because he was really popular. And I even saw that they're using him for the new series that's going to be on Disney Plus, I think.
Well, it makes sense. It's continuing on, so it makes sense.
Yeah, and they're using his version from the Age of Apocalypse too, the Whitehead version.
Which, yeah, I just love that about Morph, which is such one of those mainstays that it's not Exiles without Morph, just like it's not that way without Blink.
Except I did not like Exiles. Oh, I couldn't
really?
stand. No,
I liked Exiles until Claremont came on board. Once Claremont came on board, it became another X title.
I didn't like it when they changed. One, I didn't like it from the beginning. I always thought there was something a little bit off about it. But the moment they changed artists, for the first time around, I was like, this is I can't read this. It hurts my eyes.
Fair enough. I gotta say, one thing I've been loving is every time now I see a capybara on Twitter. If you notice, I gotta share it with you guys. Like the one that was inside the sewers, or the guy on the bike with the capybara. And it's just like, you guys have made capybaras so recognizable for those who are fans of the series. It's like as soon as I see him, like, hey, Badger.
Have you heard Doug Ernst's conspiracy theory? He thinks that we're the ones who popularized capybaras.
I don't
Because
think you popularized it, but you made it recognizable for those who didn't know about it.
he was like he was like, man, ever since you guys introduced it in Common America, I swear I see capybaras everywhere. And I was like, I don't know, I've always liked capybaras. Even Mark knows this. When I introduced Badger into the series, he was like, what's the explanation for the capybara? And I was like, there is no explanation. I just want to draw a capybara. And so he's like, okay, fair enough. So at some point, she just got a pet capybara because Tim really wants to draw a capybara.
And again, I just love that though. I just love that so much. It's just this whole idea of like I said, just this weird, interesting creature that she keeps thinking is a badger. I just love that the whole like, hey Badger, he's a capybara. Badger.
I need to find an excuse to draw a manatee. I love manatees too.
Oh, I think you love drawing that with the Florida girl bit, right?
Oh yeah. I love manatees. And then let's see what else I like. See, I think I've already covered all my bases. Like I love tanukis. That's why Bazooki is in Black Ops.
Oh yeah. By the way, with the Black Ops arc, how far do you have that planned out with Apex Moss? It feels like between the two of them, it feels like the two arcs. It feels like it's Apex Moss. Something maybe because there's so few books, but he always seems to he's almost more like the Xanatos of between the two series. It just feels like this is a little criticism of mine. I want to know, it's going so glacially slow by comparison. I want to know what's his end game because it keeps on being like, oh, is it this? No, it's not. Is it this? No, it's not. It's like that's my little critique. I still love it. I'm just curious.
It seems glacially slow because we only put out one Black Ops book a year.
Exactly.
And again, that's that problem that Mark and I were talking about before, where it's always a question of time. Is in the mind of the readers, are we getting to this plot point fast enough, or is it going too slow? I reread Black Ops not too long ago because I had to compile the omnibus, and I had the opposite opinion. I was like, oh I think we're getting there too fast because.
Well, I don't know the end goal. You know it, so that's what it feels for me.
All I know is that. So I don't know how much of this to spoil. So you know how he's been gathering parts,
right?
There's a reason for that, and
I have a feeling.
It's pretty much revealed, I think, at the end of this volume. So the end of this volume is going to conclude the crossover arcs, and then with Black Ops 7, the team is going to be narrowed down back to its core members, and we're going to reveal what he was trying to do with all those parts. So as far as plot is concerned, I mean, that part is going to get revealed pretty quickly.
I see it feels more like Albert Wesker than Xanatos. True, I was just going by the whole notion of even when he loses, he wins. Which was more of a Xanatos thing than it was a Wesker thing. Because Wesker, he lost.
That was actually something that Mark brought up. So the problem that if you rewatch like G.I. Joe or the Transformers, the cartoons, one problem that you're going to run into as an adult trying to rewatch those is that the bad guys never win.
Exactly.
Like, it's predictable because at the end of every episode, they get beaten and they run away with their tail between their legs.
It's why people prefer the reinventions on them when they actually do get victories and everything.
Well, and so one thing Mark wanted to do was he wanted to make sure that whenever we do one of these books, that it almost feels like a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back type thing, where the good guys prevail, but there's always a catch. And the catch so far has been that Apex Moth, he did not get the grand prize, but he didn't need the grand prize. All he needed was basically like the runner-up prize, and that was really all he needed to achieve like his grander idea or his grander scheme.
Like with Pitchfork, for example.
Yeah, he gets the tail at the end.
Exactly, which I do like how you don't notice that until toward the very end. You're like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
Like I say, with Pitchfork, I love it. It's a simple name, just like Pitchfork.
Yeah.
It's a slight improvement.
He's the Jersey Devil. We had we had someone not too long ago, and they're like, "Hey, have you guys ever thought about introducing cryptids to your book?" And we're like, "I don't even know how to respond to that. Like, I don't know which book you've been reading because, like, if you look at it, they're in there." And he's like,
Yep.
"What?" And it's like, "Yeah, the Devil of the Pine Barrens. That's the Jersey Devil." He was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Are you gonna introduce the Mothman?" It's like, we have the Mothman. That's the bad guy.
That's Apex Moss. Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things where it's like you don't want to insult your readers, but on the other hand, it's like,
If they're missing the point, you gotta get at least point to like, no, dude, you're overthinking it. Here's what it is.
right? It's like we try to be subtle, where it's like they're our analogs of those characters, but like they're there.
Yeah.
For example, Mimic Nautilus, he's the doppelganger, so he's a legendary
Right.
creature.
Definitely.
The Tassel Worm, that's a real cryptid. Like that's a real cryptid that people say exists.
Oh, what is that thing there in the little jar?
That's the Goblin.
Oh,
So if you I don't know where you're from geographically, but there's actually a real
I'm
cryptid
from Michigan.
they're called the Hopkinsville Goblins.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a family that lived in, I want to say Hopkinsville, Tennessee or Kentucky, and supposedly they were terrorized by these like alien-looking things that they describe as goblins, and so that's a reference to that.
Nice. So, I gotta say, Jackknife just like, did she tick him off or something?
Well, yes and no. She did kill pretty much every last jackalope in
That's
America.
what I thought. I had a feeling.
So their relationship is interesting.
Yeah, but he's not that aggressive. He's more like, boom, yeah, just whacks him in the head or in the butt and everything. So, yeah, I mean, here's it with punchline. I love that. That better not be a jab at me, especially when you're on my turf and in my hometown.
And this is another one of those references. You'll notice that she doesn't act too surprised, and it's because this takes place after the events of the Rags crossover.
Ah,
But we word it in a way where if you don't know that, that's fine. To readers who just read Common America, you can see it one of two ways.
how else can I get issues of Rags? I'm just curious because I know there's a digital. I want to get my own ones on my hands on them and everything.
They have them on Antarctic Press. Now, Antarctic Press's mobile site, I've been using it the last few days, and it's not that great.
No, it's not.
No, you want to use their console version, or you want to use a browser to do it, and just do a search for Rags on there, and it's a lot easier than using a mobile device to do it.
All right, because I'm just curious on that because obviously this stuff's going to be important, so I really should start getting some of this stuff so I can actually go over it. Plus, I also have the first two trades of Punchline, so obviously I should be getting the whenever they do the third one, I'll be getting that one.
Yeah, I think Bill is getting that one ready. Last time I talked to him, I think he's prepping for that one. I don't know if he's launching a campaign by the end of the year or early next year.
Yeah, Bill is such a nice guy. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I originally backed the book last second. Like, they just closed the campaign. I said, can I still back it? He said, sure, PayPal me it. Nothing came through at all. I fell to the crack. I later on, when he started this campaign, said, hey, I never got the book. What'd he do? He said, oh, dude, I'm so sorry. I'll give you this one for free.
Who said that, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Bill's a super nice guy.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, that's awesome. So I got both of these for the cost of just the first one because falling to the crack, which I'm just like, that is one of the nicest things. And
I'll share this story with you. So,
go ahead.
Sometimes, I mean, we try to be as charitable as possible, but there was a reader not too long ago. I want to say it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I remember it was around the time I got COVID, which was like, that was not last year. That had to be the year before.
Right.
But they had messaged me and they were like, hey, I just want you to know I don't have the money to back your book. And I was like, one, I don't look at that stuff, so I don't look to see who's backing and who's not. I don't really care who does it because everyone has their own reasons. Some people can't afford it. Some people might not like it. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why people don't buy our books, and that's fine. So I said, no, don't. You don't have to share that information with me. It's fine. And they're like, yeah, times are tough financially. And I was like, tell you what, don't worry about it. I'll mail you a book once the fulfillment is over. And they're like, oh, really? You will? I was like, yep. And so the fulfillment on Indiegogo had finished. And they messaged me and they said, hey, are you going to send me my book? And I said, well, not yet, because the Kickstarter hasn't finished fulfillment. So we got to finish that next. And so we finished that. And they're like, hey, have you mailed me are you going to mail me the books? And I go, no, because what we have to do next is inventory. So what we do next is
I can see where this is going.
They inventory everything in the warehouse, and then once that's done, then I'll send it to you. And they said, okay. So finally, they inventoried everything, and I said, okay, what's your mailing address? And they said, oh, it's this. And I said, okay. So I mailed it to them. And 3 days later, they posted a review up on Twitter where they said our book sucked. And I was like,
what?
Oh, man. And so after that, when people are like, hey, I can't afford your book.
Oh, no.
I turn every single request down.
I don't blame you. This is why fandoms can't have nice things.
And I'm just like, last time I got burned so bad because this person was like, yeah, I got the book in 6 out of 10. It wasn't that great. I was like, I literally sent you a book for free. I mean,
that's your something.
I appreciate honest criticism, but I feel like that's like one of those things where it's like, I tried to do a good thing. And then I think in their mind, they're like, well, I'm doing you a good thing by giving you honest feedback. It's like, you could have done that privately because you didn't have to pay for it, but whatever. And so, so anyway, that's a long way of saying I think Bill is a really nice guy.
Yep, he is. By the way, I should point out that I also added one other autograph to it. I had Tom Zoller, since he did the lettering, sign the book as well. You could hold on.
If you ever meet Brian Denham, he did a few pages in that book too.
Yeah, cool. I will definitely do that. I'm just so glad. I want to meet you guys and Weldon and Bill and all that stuff. Seriously, if you guys got invited to Michigan, Motor City Comic Con, would you guys come?
Yeah, that was one where I think someone tried to get us to go to the show, but the problem is always going to be travel and compensation and stuff like that.
Right.
Because, so for an artist to make it up there, let's say we paid our own way. I mean, you have to make, I don't know, you have to make at least $2,000 to $3,000 just to make it worth your while.
And I believe
so.
Yep.
Well, and so typically we go anywhere where our travel is paid for. That's the big one. I mean,
I gotcha.
Sometimes we'll negotiate with conventions where they'll say, hey, we'll pay for your travel if you pay for the booth. It's like, oh, sure. Or they'll say, we'll pay for your travel if you pay for your hotel. And that's fine, too, because hotel...
Travel's the most expensive.
Oh, definitely, because we live in the South, and so to travel up north, that's going to be at least $300 to $500. But hotels, we can typically wing it, because if we split a room and it's $100 to $150 a night, that's a lot easier than compensating for the travel.
Exactly. So, yeah, one other question. When it comes to, because you have the crossover, have you guys figured out a timeline yet for where, like, Punchline and all that stuff fits in between it? Like, because you guys had that timeline for Soul Finder before, so I was just curious, have you figured out where the other books fit in?
No, but the difference is that Soul Finder is an iconic book, and so we're a lot more tight-knit, whereas Punchline and Rags, they have their own things going on.
Gotcha.
And Punchline and Rags predates all of our books too, so timeline-wise, I mean, it's anyone's guess as far as where they are.
True.
Now there is a timestamp for Rags though. It does take place, like the Black Ops 6 crossover takes place after the events that are currently transpiring in their book.
Right.
That's for sure.
Okay. But sorry, just know that I'm getting a lot of backlog on my internet over here, because that happens sometimes where it just starts to backlog, and it's like, you know how it goes, right? You just start to have like a whole bunch of memory eating up. That's why my camera went out for a second there. It's like, sorry.
I have that issue right now because I bought a gaming computer a few years ago, and I don't use it for gaming because I don't play games, but I use it for speed and for memory. but I had to switch over to my other drive because I'm running out of space. And
Ah,
the problem is that when I'm trying to run Photoshop, I had to reallocate where the RAM or where the memory went because
mm-hmm.
it was having a difficult time just opening files and running the internet at the same time. I hate it, and so
Mm-hmm.
I'm kicking myself because I'm like, man, if I only waited a year, I could have bought a computer with like terabyte space and with like solid state hard drive and whatnot.
Right.
So I get what you mean. I feel your
Yep.
pain.
Yep. So as far, so you had, obviously you've come a long way since when you first did Walmart and Black Ops and everything. What would you say is how, like, because you guys have probably been, like I said, in my opinion, the gold standard for funding comics. What's your opinion about how the state of crowdfunding comics? Do you think it's improved? Do you think it's stagnated? Do you think it's no different? What would you say?
Um, so I think that if you look at October, Kickstarter
Hmm.
had a record number of projects on its site. So the good thing is that I think the visibility and the profile of using crowdfunding to fund comics is bigger, which is good because more people can enter the marketplace.
Hmm.
However, I think a lot of people have their reservations as to what to fund.
Hmm.
And I think the reason they have their reservations is because word has spread that there are so many campaigns with that are either late or unfulfilled
Hmm.
that it's really scared people off to the point where they're a little bit more hesitant in terms of what they're going to decide to back. And I
Yep.
think the unfortunate thing is that they're probably going to be backing projects that are by bigger companies like Boom Studios. You know, if Boom Studios puts out a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers comic, people are more likely to back that because they
I
feel more confident in that company versus like a Joe Schmo up and coming creator who has to prove that he can get the lead out and actually put the book out.
right now in
And I
my
know
case. I'm sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
I know that people they make fun of the whole late books idea where they're like, "Oh, you're just saying late books." It's like
It's
just
true.
I'm saying, look, all you have to do is pull up a campaign that's late and pull up their comment section. I don't have to give an opinion on this. Just pull it up
Exactly.
and look at the number of people who say, I can't believe I waited 2, 3 years for this. I am never backing another crowdfunded campaign again. They don't say, I'm not backing you again. They say, I'm not backing another crowdfunded campaign again. So
Right.
you can make fun of that all you want, but that's the reality of it. There are people who, honestly, they trust them to fulfill because they think they're a bigger creator. They're not going to give us a second glance. So the good thing is right now we're just happy with the readers that we have who come back because they trust us and they like our
Hmm.
work. Whenever I'm asked to give advice to new creators, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you because not many people take my advice and they
They
ignore it.
should.
And it's like, that's there's only so much I can do as far as that's concerned, which is why like with Iconic, on average, we don't take more than 2 new creative teams a year because it's rare. We have to see eye to eye in terms of business. Like, what
Hmm.
are your goals? What do you want to do? And for example, this year we had Scott Mallon and Bryce Beal. They joined, and so did Sven Stoffels, who just joined recently. And we had to have a long talk in terms of what your realistic expectations are as far as speed of delivery and how you feel about customer service, how you treat your readers and stuff like that. That stuff is really important to us in terms of keeping the reputation of Iconic consistent, where it's like, well, you might not like our books, but you're not going to fault our service.
Exactly. I mean, heck, look what else I got from Iconic.
Yeah, and Arcathena and Doug, I mean, we're always experimenting with new ways to sell. Doug and Eric Canetti, they don't like crowdfunding. Like they just hate it. And
I
so
don't blame them. I don't blame them. I
and they're
don't
like,
blame them.
we're just gonna go direct to market. I mean, just you can go in there and just buy the books right now, and that's the model that they choose to use. And that's not to say that we probably won't do that in the future. I mean, if we know that we can release a book and we can get the same amount of people who traffic the Iconic site, I mean, that might be something that we do in the future.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, and hey, that's some good words and everything because with me. I've been keeping an eye on a lot of the
Oh,
crowdfunding, and
I have a question.
yep,
You're friends with Nerdette, for
yep.
example. Does she even read like crowdfunded books anymore? Or is she like, I'm done. I'm just sticking
Yeah,
to
no,
whatever I
no.
can pull
She does
from.
read books from some of the ones that she has held back, like Born in Blood, for example, from Comic
Sure.
Elite. All the Comic Elite books she has done, read and gone over and done reviews on. So, yeah, I mean, if you guys reach out to her, you got, I'm sure, and
I don't.
send
I
her
don't
the.
want to do that. I don't reach out to YouTube
Fair
people.
enough, fair enough, fair enough, fair enough.
It's a.
Uh,
It's. I don't feel like it's my place to do
hey,
that.
trust me, though, she would appreciate, and if you reached out to her, she wouldn't mind. I can speak for, positively about that, but hey, I understand completely. That's why I
it
always
just.
try
It
to.
just. It just feels weird. I mean, as a person who does YouTube, I mean,
Mhm.
I'm guessing you might feel pretty good about it. You're like, oh,
Oh,
thank you
yeah,
for reaching out to me. But
exactly.
I think for me, so it's funny. Before we went into crowdfunding, I actually
Hmm.
did not like the idea because I was like, oh, I don't like feeling like I'm begging for money. Like that's like a, I've never, my whole life, I've always lived debt free. I've always paid back my debts, and I
Hmm.
always hated the idea of owing someone something. And so the idea of me being like, "Oh, will you read my book?" like I don't know.
I
It's
hear.
just such a foreign
Hey, you
idea.
want begging for money? Hey guys, if you want to help support me, I have a tip link up above. See, I don't mind.
There was a at conventions. There are some people who have tip jars at their
Hmm.
booths, and people have been encouraging us to do that for the longest time.
Hmm.
And I have put it off because of that feeling where I'm like, oh, I feel bad. Like,
Oh
why
yeah.
would I ask for a tip? But whenever we process Square payments, you would be shocked how many people leave us a tip. So it's
Right.
like, oh, your purchase comes up to $15, and I look at the receipt and they gave us 20, and I'm like,
Hmm.
hey, you overpaid. They're like, no, keep the tip. I was like, oh, thanks. Like, okay, that's cool.
Right. Exactly. So yeah, that's pretty much all been able to ask all the questions I wanted to ask. I think we've done pretty well. You got the campaign's going to be done in a few days, so you guys should definitely go and back it if you're into it. There's the omnibuses collecting everything. Seriously, those omnibuses are some of the best ideas you guys have had to help keep people caught up and everything.
If people are wondering about the Amazon site, I'll be honest,
Hmm.
I am so swamped, and it takes forever to format a book for print on demand on
Hmm.
Amazon.
Right,
And so a lot of people have been asking, when are you going to put up the rest of the Common America books? I'm like, they will go up. I just need to find the time because,
right, right.
my gosh. So a little bit of information for people who are thinking about it. It takes forever because you think that you have it done right, and then the robot on the other end, the
Oh
program,
no.
it will actually tell you did no. This is one time where you side with the robot because the robot's like, all clear, like your manuscript looks good. Now we're gonna send it to the human, and you're like, okay. And it's the humans who are like, nah, we don't like the way you formatted this book.
Oh.
and, and I forgot which volume it was. I was pulling my hair out because I was like, I have gone through 4 revisions. It's gone through 4 humans, and they all and one at the very end. I was so frustrated because one contradicted the first one.
Oh no.
So the first one was like, oh, on page 7, you need to move this speech bubble in, and I was like, okay. And then on the 4th revision, this fourth person was like, hey, on page 7, the speech bubble, I think you moved it too far inside. You can move it out some. And I like freaked out over the phone. I was like, you need to look at what the first guy said because he told me to move the speech bubble in, and he was like, he did, didn't he? Oh well, if you want it approved, like you should probably just move it back out. I was like, are you gonna review it? Are you the one who's gonna actually give it the okay? He's like, yeah, if we do it over the phone, and that's the only way I got that thing approved. And I think I was losing so much sleep over formatting them that after volume 5 or 6, I think I was like, I'm gonna take a break because
Yeah, I
this is
don't
such a
blame you.
pain.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But yeah, though, like I said, like Tim, keep up the great work. Hopefully, give it a few more volumes. I'll have you back on again. And just everyone, just enjoy it. Back the book. It's such a great book, great series. Can't wait to see how this crossover arc ends. And any final words you want to have, Tim?
No, we're very grateful to all the people who have read our books, liked them, shared them, talked about them. That makes us really happy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's one thing for me because as the artist, I basically just do the mechanical portion of it. But I know it makes Mark feel really good because he's the person who has to put the story together.
Yep.
And so the good thing is people rarely talk about the art, but they talk about the story, and I think that's the most
I
important
love both.
thing.
I love both.
Oh well, thank you. We like the fact that we can entertain and that we're bringing stories to people that resonates with them. So before I forget, I just want to say thank you and also a
Mm-hmm.
happy Thanksgiving to all
Yep.
of you out there because Thanksgiving is this week here in America.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
stay safe and happy and healthy and
Mm-hmm.
back our project if it's something that you like. And if you're waiting for Common America 9, that will be out sometime between February and March next year. So
Mm-hmm.
that's coming up pretty soon.
Yep. And I'm gonna end it all with a question I want you guys to put in a comment. And yes, I'm saying this as a trolling comment to certain people out there, but if you're a fan of Common America, what's your favorite part? What's your favorite moment in Common America?
And we'd like to know. Thank you so much.
Yep. So yep, we'll be seeing you guys on the next one. Take
Later.
care.